I will call to order the meeting of the Parks and Recreation Commission for March 28th, 2018. If you will all join me for the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ms. Navarez, if you do roll, please.
Chair Longstreet.
Here.
Vice Chair Clark. Commissioner Lesnar-Buxton.
Here.
Commissioner McGill.
Here.
Commissioner Armbruster.
Here.
Commissioner Perry.
Here.
Commissioner Martinez-Cullen.
Okay. Are there any changes to the agenda, Ms. Zachary? No? Written communications? No. So it brings us to public comment. Any member of the public may address the commission for up to 2 minutes on any subject within the jurisdiction of the commission that is not scheduled for public discussion before the commission. And I have not received any slips, so I will close public comment. Yep.
If what I want to talk about is on the agenda, you don't need it now?
No, we will need your slip for the item. So just if you turn it into Ms. Zachary.
Thank you.
Okay. It's spring break. I assume we probably don't have a youth council report. Okay.
Chair Longstreet, we don't because it is spring break, but we do want the commission to know, and anyone who might be watching, that applications are now being accepted for the Santa Barbara Youth Council. Students that are interested in the Youth Council must be a city resident or attend one of the public high schools and be between the ages of 13 and 18. The applications are available on the city's website under boards and commissions, or they can be picked up at City Hall. Those applications are due by 5 o'clock on May 1st to the city clerk's office. And the city council does conduct interviews, as you all know, and that's something that the youth council members potential would also come and interview before council.
Thank you very much. So anyone interested in serving on our youth council, please get your application in by May 1st. Okay, Commissioner Committee Assignment Reports. Let's start with Commissioner Perry.
We did attend the Arts and Crafts Committee meeting last week, and they are moving forward fast and furious. They probably had 7 or 8 new applicants for the show, so they are building and filling any holes they may have had in the past, and looking forward to a positive spring.
Good. I'm sure they were impacted by the recent tragedies we've had here, so.
I'd say more so the construction, but that didn't help.
Yeah.
Great.
Ms. Armbruster.
I attended the golf committee meeting, and there's a couple of good community events coming up there. So they're going to be hosting an Easter egg hunt on Saturday, March 31st from 2 to 4, and that's a free community event. And then on April 17th, they're having a special dollar day where green fees, driving range tokens, and many other items will be $1 all day.
Good deal. Commissioner McGill.
Unfortunately, I was unable to attend the Park Foundation meeting last week.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Lesnar-Buxton.
I attended the youth council meeting. They're working on a number of projects, including a coverage on immigration and the awards banquet.
Okay, the Youth Awards Banquet is always a really special event every year. That's wonderful. Do they have a date for that event? Do you recall?
I forget, but
Okay.
I'll bring it next time, and they usually give us an invitation, so I'll make sure we get invitation.
And I would encourage anybody any of the commissioners to attend. It's really an inspiring evening. So, I attended the Neighborhood Advisory Council, and we received a report on block parties and how to plan them. It was slightly overwhelming because I think we received more of a report on everything you would need to do to run Fiesta. And I think our goals were a lot smaller and probably more in line with tabling at other organized events. So we are moving forward at NAC. Do we have any commission and staff communications?
Chair Longstreet, not specifically, but I did just want to remind the commission that you have a site visit this coming Wednesday at Chase Palm Park. And then also we had a community meeting scheduled for Thousand Steps last week when it was raining. We've rescheduled that for Thursday, April 5th at 5:30. And then I also sent you an email about the Youth Apprentice, the Young Chef benefit on the 7th, if anyone has the opportunity to attend.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so now we are to ceremonial items. Mr. Santa Escobar going to introduce this item?
Yes, I am.
Okay, welcome.
I get the pleasure of doing this item. All right, well, I get to introduce our Kids World Volunteer Recognition. I'm very happy to present to you today. Just a quick little background on Kids World. Kids World is a community-built playground. It was built by Leathers and Associates with the help of and design of the input of 1,200 children from schools, which was really outstanding. It was constructed in 5 days with over 4,500 volunteers. And we had over 1,200 tools donated when we built this playground. It was completed in 1993. And today we are honoring and giving thanks to our volunteer, Mr. Joseph Jarrett. He was a key volunteer supervisor with an extensive history of cabinet furniture construction as well as general contracting. Not only did he bring his expertise in finished carpentry, but he brought and set up his own workshop. His talents were quickly recognized by the Leathers Associate team, and they were thrilled to bring him more and more challenging projects, which he took on with a happy smile. And then later, which I'll show you, he also built a viewing bench in 1998 where he designed it and constructed it. And I get to show you some of his beautiful work. So Joseph built all of our rooftops for Kids World. Our beautiful sound wall where we have these beautiful chimes that kids get to play with. It's absolutely outstanding. Tic-tac-toe. My kids used to love playing with this. This was just outstanding as well. The finger maze. I always forgot to bring marbles and such because kids used to love doing this as well. My little boy used to bring his Hot Wheels on this little track here. And then just the intense detailing work that you see when you go into the structure. You just need to keep looking and you'll see it, and it's Joseph's touch. Just, what can you say? It's just true craftsmanship. You don't see this type of work too often. And then here's our beautiful teak viewing bench. So, if you get a chance, have a seat out there. It's quite nice as well. So, thank you, Joseph, for your contributions and dedications to Kids World throughout the years. We appreciate it. We want you to keep coming back and helping us out.
Glad to be a part. My pleasure.
Come up, and I would just like to add, the commission knows we just reopened Kids World, and Joseph played a key role in updating all of these elements as part of that. I met him for the first time at our ribbon cutting, and his energy, excitement, desire, skills, everything was just really, really touching. I wish we could duplicate him. He's a fantastic volunteer, and his granddaughter also helped in this next go-around. You have in your packet a letter that he wrote specifically to you regarding his approach to this.
Thank you. Are we on? Thank you so much for everything that you did. Kids World is a really special place. We have some of the features you see in other parks in plastic, and they don't carry the same weight. What you did made it truly unique. And Kids World wouldn't be here if it wasn't for volunteers. I just, when I read about your granddaughter helping, my son and his dad worked on Kids World, and now I have grandkids here, and it's the legacy that makes it all so much more meaningful. So thank you for everything, and we appreciate all that you continue to do in Kids World. Thank you, sir.
Truly been my
Thank
pleasure.
you. Would you like to say something?
Well, again, thank you for the acknowledgement. I'm receiving this on the behalf of a whole lot of people that played a very big role in 1993. It truly was a wonderful, wonderful community organization of so many people, and truly one of the most heartfelt things that I had done. When I got involved in it the first day, when I realized the heartfelt sentiment of the people, it was true that I was the first one at the gate every morning, and was thrilled to have been there. I have to share also, as a volunteer supervisor for Kids World, I got one of these ugly green T-shirts that distinguished me as a supervisor, and I've saved it for 25 years. So
Excellent.
I keep it in my closet, and I've just broken it out for this occasion. But thank you all for the acknowledgement, and I've been honored to be a part of it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We are truly blessed in our community to have a facility like Kids World, so thank you. Okay, now we're on to summary of council actions. I would just like to congratulate staff on the awarding of the contract for the playground at the tennis courts. That's nice to see that project moving along, and I know it's going to benefit the East Side youth a lot. So good job yesterday. Are there any questions of staff on the, it was only a single item. Okay, so we will move on to minutes. Any questions or comments on the minutes, or I would entertain a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve as presented.
Okay. Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. And that brings us to Street Tree Advisory.
Chair Longstreet and Commissioners, we have Nathan Slack, who's going to be doing the presentation. He is our street tree supervisor. Some of you may not have had a chance to meet Nathan yet, so he's taking over for Tim today.
Good afternoon, Chair Longstreet and Commissioners. Item 4A1 on your agendas is for the request for the removal of one street tree. The tree species is a holly oak. The physical address for this parcel is 1202 Diana Road, which is actually on the other side of the parcel. It's kind of a unique piece of property where it actually rests behind some addresses on Diana Road, and there's this large access sort of alley that runs between Coda and Diana, connecting the two properties. There's a project going on right now through review for subdivision being built on the property. As part of the review, Fire has requested that there be a 20-foot access road put in to access the property now that there will be multiple families living on that parcel. And the expansion of that driveway forces the removal of the street tree. The committee, in this case, reviewed the application, saw the tree on site, felt that it made logical sense, and recommended removal of the street tree. I will note there is a setback tree, and it was outlined in the packet as well. There's a structure of potential historical significance on the property. So the setback tree in this case is reviewed by the Historic Landmark Commission.
Okay, thank you. We do have a public speaker for this item. Do we have any questions first of staff? Okay, Ms. Slonsky?
Hello.
So I live in the complex on Coda Street that this is right out my window that I look out all the time. He mentioned that there's a kind of a development between Diana and Coda, and the word alley there kind of pains me because it's not an alley. It's my driveway and a nice patch of nice green land with some trees in it. It's a easement that is shared with the property. It's a condo association I live in with 4 units. And we have an easement with the property on Diana. But they've never used it in the time that we've all lived there. It's just been grass. And so with this project, they're talking about making that a bigger, opening that up so somebody could walk or drive all the way through. That now becomes an alley, and you've connected Coda Street to Ortega. I think it's the next one over. So everyone in my condo association is opposed to the whole project, and specifically we take issue with a bunch of different things, but the tree removal and changing of the look of our property is definitely part of it. So I just wanted to come and express the opposition to the whole project and to the tree removal specifically of my condo association, which is Monarch Terrace Condo Association at 1133 Coda Street.
But this street tree is in front of their property, not yours?
It's in front of my property. So this is actually Coda Street that you see right here. And so, Coda Street is here, the Diana Street is here, the property that they're subdividing is over here, and they have just a grassy patch that leads out to Coda that has trees on it. Our driveway runs from Coda, right where they're standing in my driveway right now to take this picture. And my property is all here. So the trees that we're looking at removing are on Coda right out my window. It's not really near the Diana Street property. Diana Street would be through this alley they're creating.
Okay. That's confusing me a little bit because I don't understand how they can pay a driveway on your property. Okay, thank you.
Chair Longstreet and Commissioners, if you look at the second page of the attachment to this staff report, I think Nathan can walk you through how it will change, and it appears that the access to the property, once it's built, needs to go through the area that is currently grass and has trees. And the width of that access is what's driving the removal of the street tree. So it's something that's being required as a part of the development. The ability to deny removal of the street tree is probably limited. However, the commission could ask for more information regarding the potential future landscaping and how that might benefit the surrounding property owners.
Well, and my, depending on how we go as a commission, also we can approve the removal contingent on the approval of the plans. We will not take the tree out until the plans are moved forward in the process. Commissioner McGill.
Yeah, just a question for clarification. The driving force behind the width of the access, as I understand, is emergency response access?
Chair Longstreet and Commissioners, that is correct. In the report, they've identified the 20 feet as necessary for ingress and egress out of the property.
And the reason for not having a contingent approval and not based on a landscaping contingency as opposed to a planning permission contingency is the fact that the space is needed regardless, so there's really no place to put another tree?
In this situation, the driveway expansion would make that like an unsuitable location for a new street tree.
Can we request replacement of that tree somewhere on the site?
I know that I know there's a lot of like new planting that's going in, and they've proposed like a sort of a landscaped buffer, pedestrian access through the improvements. So there will be a lot of planting done, and they're doing some on-site mitigation as part of some removal of trees on the actual parcel. So there's a lot of planting going on. I don't have a lot of information in regards to the full detail. If you were looking to offset, there's always potential vacancies,
Are there
across
other-
the street. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
there's definitely
I-
opportunities for offsetting the loss of the tree.
I think that's always a good idea, and especially in a development project, to offset the loss of a tree by planting on that block in a vacant space. Other questions or concerns? So what we have before us is a development plan, and because many of our commissioners are somewhat new to this, we have in the past with developments, and one of the biggest examples I would give is when they were building the hotels down on Lower State Street. And we okayed a great number of tree removals, as you can well imagine, but we made them contingent on not removing any vegetation until construction began. And so that is something that we can put forward. So, yes, Commissioner Perry.
If I can ask for some clarity, the tree's not as much of an issue as it is the widening of the access for emergency vehicles. Am I hearing you correctly? Yes. And we have no jurisdiction over that in this
No, we
commission. Ours is only the tree. So we're kind of between a rock and a hard place, I would think.
Yes, I would say if this plan goes forward, that tree will come out, is the reality of it. In the development of it, that's what's going to happen. But this is our opportunity to gain a tree on the block and to put some parameters on when it'll be removed. If this plan takes 3 years to get through historic landmarks, we don't want anybody taking the tree out until the development happens. So does that, okay. Yes. Oh, okay.
I'll make a motion if we're ready.
Do you have a question or a motion?
I just had sort of a half comment, half question. What I'm hearing makes sense in terms of what you're suggesting as a motion. By my, I'm not sure if it's a concern or not, but what I observe is that generally, if a tree is removed, there's a contingency for replacing it, and in this case, there isn't a contingency for replacing it in your recommendation. So I have to believe there's a reason for that, and would be curious to know what that is.
Chair Longstreet and Commissioners, I think in this unique situation, the tree's relatively young, the driveway expansion was seen as logical, and the committee didn't feel the need to make a recommendation for a new street tree, like in the general vicinity. I unfortunately was not at the meeting. They may have had some discussion about the amount of planting that was going to be happening as a result of the project. I know that the Street Tree Advisory Committee a lot of times thinks about our total gained canopy versus lost canopy, and they may have felt that the project was offsetting enough by putting in the landscaping along the roadway and the mitigation that's occurring on site, not requiring or not making a condition for a replacement tree.
Chair Longstreet and Commissioners, I would also direct you to the application. And in the application, the paragraph at the bottom talks about the fact that the site does have a number of trees, which I imagine the neighborhood is benefiting from tremendously. That there is the plan to remove 6 of them. There's also a plan to replace at a ratio of 3 to 1. If the commission would like more information about the proposed landscape plan, that's certainly something that we can bring back to the commission. Commissioner Perry is correct in that the purview of the commission is related to this street tree. In looking at the site plan, it could be that there isn't room for another street tree. We have sometimes they were challenging to find space if the driveways are too close together and there's sightline issues. And in the past, there have been opportunities in lieu of a street tree to ask that a setback tree be planted on the property. This is a narrative, it's not a design, but it sounds like there is a plan to make sure there is significant tree coverage on the property. Again, I can't speak to that for certainty, just in reviewing the application.
Okay, thank you. That clarifies, though, and I think gives us more information. So, Ms. Armbruster, were you?
Yeah, I'll make a motion.
Great.
I'll make a motion to allow the removal of the street tree at 1202 Diana Road, the Holly Oak, contingent upon the approval of the project, and with also contingent upon a planting of another tree in a vacant spot, another street tree in a vacant spot on that street.
Okay. If possible. I
If
think,
possible.
If possible. Okay, is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, passes unanimously. Thank you for coming. Okay, our next item, 625 West Valerio.
Yes, Chair Longstreet and Commissioners, item 4B1 is for the request of a setback tree removal at 625 West Valerio Street. The request for removal is for a Chinese elm located within the front setback. In the application, the property owners listed that the tree had a pronounced lean. The lean is towards the utility lines, which you can sort of see in the photograph. There's also been previous branch failure, and there's also just a general concern about the crowding of the setback tree as well as the street trees. The committee reviewed the application, reviewed the tree on site, felt that there was a conflict. The tree's been subject to routine utility pruning over the years as well due to its lean towards the utility line, so it's routinely reduced to keep the minimum required distance from the voltage lines. After review, the committee made the recommendation to support the removal of the setback tree, and this is also a unique situation where the street's densely planted, the front yards are quite short or narrow, and in this case they didn't feel that a replant to offset the loss of this tree was necessary.
Okay, thank you. Are there questions, Mr. Thought? I'd entertain a motion. Ms. McGill.
Yes. I move to approve the request to remove the the Chinese elm tree at 625 West Valerio Street.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion of the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you. 800 West Anapamu.
Chair Longstreet and Commissioners, item 4C1 was a request for a code designation of street tree species in the 800 block of West Anapamu Street. Previously, in November 15th of 2017, the Commission approved the removal of a setback tree located at 816 West Anapamu Street. It was an olive tree that was planted in front of the property. There was a condition for a new tree to be replanted. The property owner and the applicant for both requests has asked that the committee re-review the species designation for consideration of the inclusion of Arbutus. A lot of people know it as Arbutus marina, as a co-species designation to allow for the replacement tree to be an Arbutus marina. The committee reviewed the request. The current and longstanding species designation for the 800 block of West Anapamu is the red flowering gum, or Corymbia physifolia, and that's the dominant species on the street. They reviewed the The request considered the co-designation and ultimately decided to deny the inclusion of Arbutus marina and stay with the single designation of red flowering gum.
Okay. Thank you. Questions of staff? Comments? A motion?
Actually, not quite there yet. I guess, I mean, I understand mostly the single species designation, but I know there's an awful lot of diversity of street trees on a lot of the streets, and and we have here an applicant who's actually kind of doing the right thing, and I'm struggling to know the flip side of basically what's wrong with putting an arbutus in.
Chair Longstreet and Commissioners, I unfortunately wasn't at the meeting, so I don't have like a great pulse of the conversation. In this specific block, there is a pretty dense concentration of the red flowering gum. I think that in a lot of cases when there's been the uniqueness of old, consistently planted single species streets, that tends to be, there tends to be a good bit of motivation for trying to maintain that aesthetic. There's nothing particularly wrong about Arbutus. It's not like the denial came as a result of it being a problematic species. I think that it was driven primarily due to the dense concentration of existing old red flowering gums on the street. To some extent, too, the parkway size is not great, but it does afford a fair amount of available rooting volume. Arbutus tends to be a somewhat small canopy tree, whereas the red flowering gum is much more significant. So in a lot of cases, we're maximizing the potential for the size of the street tree by maintaining the red flowering gum versus using the smaller Arbutus. I think that those are probably some of the driving decision makers of the group when considering that the co-species designation denial.
Thank you.
Chair Longstreet and Commissioners, I would also add that the Commission approved the removal of a street tree contingent on planting a new tree. It might have been helpful that the applicant suggested a new species at that same time. They're actually coming back and asking for a new designation post your approval of removal of that olive tree. The comment related to there's multiple species on many city streets. The street tree master plan was adopted in 1968. So as you can imagine, we already had some trees on our streets. Some were very thoughtfully planted, obviously. We also have folks that volunteer different trees to put in street parkways, which is not something that the municipal code permits, but at the same time, it does happen. And so you sometimes see that diversity by virtue of any number of reasons. Where we do have streets where there is a consistent species, it often creates an aesthetic that is really quite unique. The idea between changing designations from street to street is also to address the potential if a disease were to take over one species, we wouldn't want to lose 50%. And we had that conversation, I think, at a recent meeting as well.
Okay, then. Thank you. Any other questions? Comments?
I'll make a motion to agree with the committee and deny the change request for the street tree designation.
Is there a second? Okay, we've got a motion, a second. Any comments? And I guess this is one of those times, too, where personally I defer to the expertise that we do have on our Street Tree Advisory Committee as they look at the site. So, and no further comments. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, thank you very much. That passes unanimously. And that brings us to the director's report.
Chair Longstreet and Commissioners, if you didn't get your email to register in our new registration system, you can still go ahead and do it. very happy to announce that after many months of planning and a tremendous amount of work over the last 2 months in particular on the part of a number of our recreation department staff, we launched our new registration software. We've been talking about this need ever since I joined the department. That's not quite true, but probably for the last 5 years, because the software system that we were using was no longer supported, and it was close to 20 years old, a little on the clunky side, to say the least. So it's been a priority of the department for the past couple of years to get to where we got to in March, and went off without a hitch. There's still some things that staff are working out. They're troubleshooting. They're working with our Perfect Mind software staff. And so far, the feedback that we've been getting from our customers is nothing but thumbs up. Some people need a little bit of help to network through it, but we're very pleased that it's been launched. And I just want to make sure I acknowledge the tremendous amount of work on the part of staff. And I'd go into the conference room and there'd be people around computers and you could feel the tension in the air and the clock ticking for the deadline, but they pulled it off and they did a tremendous job. And then it's Easter coming this weekend, and this department has a long history of supporting Easter egg hunts. We call it extravaganza. We have 2 locations, Chase Palm Park and Bonnet Park. It happens at 10 a.m. If you haven't been, it's really quite entertaining to see many, many children running across the lawn, picking up their Easter eggs. It is something that we work with both the firefighters and the Police Officers Association on. They help fund it, so it's something that's fully funded. And then also at the golf course, we actually had an Easter egg event, and Commissioner Armbruster mentioned it earlier, for the first time last year, so this is the second year that we're doing that, and our golf course management firm is actually running that. So if you run out of things to do and kids want a second Easter egg hunt, maybe, assuming their parents want to do that too, the golf club is a great opportunity as well.
Thank you. And those are really fun events, and I'd like to say a thank you ahead of time to all the people who volunteer and make those Easter egg hunts happen, because they're well organized. The kids are divided by age so that they don't get trampled, the little ones. I've always appreciated that, and just a thank you, because there's usually a group of young people that assist that are just excellent. So thank you very much. And that brings us to the IPM report. Another year has gone by, huh?
Chair Longstreet and Commissioners, Ken Brown, our park superintendent, was recently promoted to that position, and Santos Escobar will be providing the report.
I think this is the first time, Mr. Escobar, that you haven't been giving the report. Welcome.
Well, good evening, Commissioners and Chair Longstreet. We are here with, I think, the 15th annual IPM report. So we're going to go ahead and dig into this one. Integrated pest management, something the department obviously is very involved with. Integrated pest management is an effective and environmentally sensitive decision-making system of pest management. The goal is to minimize health, environmental, and financial risks. The IPM strategy promotes use of non-hazardous and/or reduced risk alternatives that are protective of human health and the environment. It also reduces and eliminates the use of pesticide products that pose known, likely, or probable human health or environmental risks. The Pesticide Hazard and Exposure Reduction Plan, which is the practical program that we operate under. This FAIR model assigns green, yellow, or special circumstance and red zones and allows use of carefully screened materials by zone designation. Materials are tracked by units. A unit is either a pound for dry materials or a gallon for wet materials. The departments involved are Parks and Recreation Department, Airport Department, Community Development Department, the Fire Department, Public Works Department, and the Waterfront Department. Obviously, the bulk of the departments involved are probably Parks and Recreation, Airport, and Public Works. This is a simplified chart of our use for this last year of 2017, as well as a comparison to 2016. You'll see our green, yellow, and red materials, as well as totals. In gallons for this past year, 2017, there was 3.22 gallons used of green material, 69.03 gallons of yellow, and 16.4 for a citywide total of 88.65. In dry materials, there is 1,235 pounds of green, 9.16 of yellow, and 77.7 of red, for a total of 1,322. The numbers that kind of stand out on this chart are probably the 1,235 pounds of green material, which was all or almost all used for mosquito control, predominantly at the Goleta Slough, the parts that sit on the airport property, as well as at the Andre Clark Bird Refuge. And the red, the number of 77 gallons of red is also a product used at the airport for the treatment of termites in some of their very large wooden buildings where heat treatment wasn't practical. Exemptions, part of the process is if departments have an emergency and they want to apply something that's not normally allowed in the program, they can come to the IPM committee and present an application to them, and the IPM committee will determine whether or not that's allowed. In this particular case, only one was asked for this year, and it was granted, and it was for the aforementioned termite control. So, citywide highlights. Our total pounds of pesticides decreased by 5% from 2016, and the total gallons of pesticides decreased by 54% from 2016. The alternative hours increased from 9,148 to 12,198. Our alternative hours are those hours tracked for items that are done usually in a more labor-intensive manual method that might have otherwise been done using chemicals. Probably the bulk of that is hand weeding or weed whipping instead of using chemical herbicides, although a lot of things are tracked, including handling rodents, a number of other materials that we did not have to use. Parks Division highlights. Total units decreased for parks from 32.87 in 2016 to 11 in 2017. Units of green materials decreased from 30.14 to 5.22, and the units of yellow materials increased from 2.73 to 5.78 units. No red materials were used, which is pretty traditional for Parks and Rec, and no exemption requests were made. Golf Division highlights. Total units of pesticides decreased from 61 in 2016 to 28.6 in 2017. Units of green materials increased from 1.27 units to 2. Units of yellow materials increased from 0 to 7.3. And units of red materials decreased from 59 to 19.1. And the golf course also continues to brew compost teas and microorganisms to help defray the need for these chemicals. Citywide tracked alternatives. So as I mentioned before, we track the hours spent doing labor that would otherwise possibly be assigned to chemicals. You can see, as we mentioned before, that there was an uptick in 2017 from 2016. You can also see some of the other years, usually very wet years, in which a substantially large amount of manual labor has gone into maintaining this program. So the summary is that aesthetics in parks always has to be addressed when you use less chemicals. For the most part, there just has to be a greater allowance of weed cover and other pest problems, although we try and stay on top of them with the previously mentioned alternative practices, but aesthetics are always an issue. Gopher population, this past year, 2017, was an exceptional gopher year. They tend to come in waves, and this one is a particularly strong one. We did just recently, in fact, I think just last week, purchase a new technology, a new piece of equipment that should help us with some gopher control. So we're always looking for new ways to deal with that other than the standard baits, which are generally red materials. And alternative practices. As always, we continue to perform alternative practices, trying to avoid the use of materials whenever there's a possibility. That, of course, requires, though, staff and their availability in the the hours needed to do that. The recommendation is that the Commission approve the IPM 2017 annual report and forward the report to Council.
Thank you.
Chair Longstreet, if I could just jump in, I also want to inform the Commission that Jeff McKee from the Airport Department, the facility manager, is here, so if you have questions. And as the report indicates, Parks and Recreation serves as the overall IPM coordinator for the entire city, so that's why we report on everybody else as well.
Thank you. And all of this, it's interesting to watch it become accepted practice. You know, that now we are at that place where this is just how it happens, and I appreciate all the work it's taken to get there. So are there questions of staff? Yes, go ahead.
So from a personal perspective, I very much look forward to hearing how your new gopher technology works.
As are we. We'll be trying it out. In fact, I think we already tried it once this week, didn't we? I think we ran it once. And we'll probably at some point in time report back to that, at the very least at the next IPM report. If not, if we have a number of successes, probably in some report between now and then.
Great. But on a more, citywide question, reading I think it's part 7 of the report, where it really talks about how difficult it is to measure success or failure because there's so many variables. It's not as simple as having a line that goes down or up. So as you look at this over the years, how do you know if you're succeeding? How do you know, how do you assure yourself that you're really on the right track? Well, not necessarily the right track, but that you couldn't do better, there's not more, when the metrics are this difficult?
Chair Longstreet and Commissioner McGill, you are right. Always, in almost all areas of municipal management, figuring out how you measure whether you're doing well is something that you have to take seriously. In this particular case, both myself and Mr. Escobar have been involved with this since the inception of the program. So we've seen the entire arc. Although this particular report begins, just for practicality, in 2010. If you look to years past from the beginning, there were striking reductions in pesticide use for the first 2 or 3 years of the program. 90-some-odd% reduction once this program really got involved. That alone is a benchmark that we're happy to reach. Just that simple reduction. But of course, you're right, balancing that with the aesthetics of the park and how well it's looking for the reduction is something that we continue to work with. Part of our performance measurements include inspecting parks based on a very rigorous set of objectives and reporting back that we feel that they're in condition or not that we're happy with. And so we balance those aesthetics with the reduction in the material, and constantly looking for new materials that will bring up our efficiency without increasing any toxic, products that we'd use.
Other Mississippi, I can't even say it, other cities where that you can benchmark yourselves against?
Yes, Chair Longstreet and Commissioner McGill. When we developed this program, the 2 cities that were really leading the charge were San Francisco and Seattle. And much of our program has taken pieces from that. The city hired a consultant that developed the FAIR zone, and he did a very meticulous job of combing through research and developing this program, and he used theirs. As is normal with these kind of programs, those cities have had both victories and problems with those programs, and they've adjusted them as the years go on, and we watch to see where they're having problems, where they're having successes, and get prepared to maybe face the same things. Obviously, we're a much smaller city than they are, but they've kind of led the way and have perhaps scaled back a bit in years, just from financial points of view and efficacy points of view, but still they're largely the 2 cities that we based our program off and continue to watch.
And I would just add to that, what was so difficult, what has always been so difficult about this is it depends on what you're looking at, what side you're looking at it from. Someone who drives by a park and it's got weeds in it and it doesn't look maintained, what success to them? what success, to someone who has a child playing at a playground and doesn't want any pesticides around. Out at the airport, if there's rodents on the runway, there's bird strikes, there's all kind. They're looking at it from a totally different point of view of safety. At the golf course, we're looking at it from a greens saving. If our greens go, we have no value in our golf course. So it is a very complicated, and over the last 15 years, working that out has been, I really have to commend staff for adopting it and working through those issues. We, at one point, had a green team. We had dedicated park staff that all they did was spread mulch and weed, and that we got the hot water to kill the weeds, and curbing went in to keep for mow strips. Concrete curbing, we had money for that for up until I think it was about 2008. All of those things. It's been interesting to watch over the arc of this what's happened. It would be lovely to get some members on a green team back to be able to raise the level in our parks of maintenance, but we'll see. So it has the questions you ask are really quite relevant in that everybody looks at from the building maintenance. I mean, they're looking at termites going, God, what do we do? And heat doesn't seem to always be the answer. So it's been interesting. Ms. Zachary.
Chair Longstreet and Commissioner McGill, some of the things that we have had to do as a result of this program, and it's neither good nor bad necessarily, or success or failure, is change our landscapes. So what you see today is probably less landscaped than what you saw 20 years ago. Some of it due to manage those landscapes. We didn't have the labor to do it without tools to help us, chemical tools to help us. Where we focus our horticulture is in certain locations. So we've scaled back in places where to keep things going requires a level of labor that, frankly, we don't have. I think from the general population standpoint, there's a greater acceptance of areas that look a little less well kept as a result of the IPM program. So we don't apply pre-emergent herbicides, for example, so weeds do show up. And then also, we've gone through periods where we've had to use materials because we've faced this critical issue, whether it's a new project going in, for example, in our creek restoration projects where we've had to address non-native exotics, and there is an approved pesticide that you can use in an aquatic environment. We've had a very specific purpose. So from a success standpoint, we've spent a lot of time figuring out when and why it is appropriate and been rigorous in that evaluation. And I think that's a success story in that it's not just, pull it off the shelf, go get your Roundup at the local home improvement store or OSH or whatever it is and do that. We actually really have to think it through and evaluate all of our alternatives and select sometimes a more expensive approach. Choose not to plant a certain species because of what it would take to manage it, because it's susceptible to some sort of disease, and or try a few things, and if those fail, then it's a last resort. So I think from a success standpoint, we actually are very careful in our consideration. But we've given up things as a result in terms of what people used to experience in our parks 20 years ago. But maybe that's okay.
Maybe we'll all live longer to enjoy the parks. That's what we're all hoping, right? Okay, well, that is the end of our agenda, I believe. Is that correct, Ms. Zachary? Oh, we have to approve this. Oh, okay. We don't get to just talk about it? All right, I would entertain a motion to accept this report.
I will move to accept the Integrated Pest Management Report.
Second it.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously, and thank you. And with that, we will adjourn the meeting. Thank you very much.